This is Heliox, where evidence meets empathy. Independent, moderated, timely, deep, gentle, clinical, global, and community conversations about things that matter. Breathe easy, we go deep and lightly surface the big ideas.
Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of precision.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Like a definitive answer.
Exactly. Like you break your arm, you go to the hospital, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, the doctor points right at it, and you have your answer. It's either broken or not broken.
Right. We are totally conditioned to expect that kind of binary diagnostic clarity. We like our problems to be, visible, easily categorized.
Right. But when you step into the world of wild ecology, into the study of endangered species, that x-ray machine is it's utterly useless.
Oh, completely. You can't just put an entire ecosystem into an MRI scanner.
No, you can't. And we are looking at a diagnostic landscape that is incredibly murky, especially right now in the Anthropocene. Because human activity is it's the dominant force reshaping the climate and the environment everywhere.
It really is the ultimate diagnostic challenge. You are trying to track the vital signs of an entire population, but you can never actually bring them into a clinic to examine them, which is wild to think about. And usually when we attempt to diagnose an endangered species, one that's living on the bleeding edge of human expansion, the prognosis we expect is just, terminal decline.
Yeah, we're very used to the standard doom and gloom narrative. Habitat loss, population crashes, the slow, inevitable march toward extinction.
But, and this is why we're here today, for the past 30 years, scientists have been rigorously tracking a population of wild chimpanzees in Uganda. And the diagnosis they arrived at completely upends our fundamental assumptions about surviving in this new geological epoch.
It really does. It's a massive, totally counterintuitive paradox.
Okay, let's unpack this because today's deep dive is focusing on a really comprehensive synthesis published in the journal Biological Conservation. We are analyzing over 3 decades of continuous data from the Kibale chimpanzee project.
Which is just a staggering amount of data to even comprehend.
It is. We are examining our closest living relatives, and they are navigating a forest that is fundamentally shifting under their feet. And the data shows they haven't just, clung to survival by a thread.
No, against all conventional ecological logic, this specific community of chimpanzees has actually thrived.
Thrived. Their population has actually grown.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And to truly grasp the mechanics of this survival trick, we have to look at how we even acquired this data in the first place. Because the entire field of primatology operates on completely different scientific timeline than, almost any other discipline.
Oh, the methodological contrast is stark. If you want to study the population dynamics of, say, a fruit fly,
right,
you can observe hundreds of generations in a matter of months in a laboratory incubator.
Just crank them out.
Exactly. Even in field biology, if you're studying small mammals or amphibians, the standard operating procedure is just rapid sampling.
Like setting traps and counting them.
Yeah, pretty much. You set out a grid of live traps in a forest, tag the individuals you catch, record their weight, their reproductive status, and then release them.
Yep.
You do that for a single season, run some statistical models, and then you just extrapolate the health of the broader population from that data.
It's like dipping a cup into a river and measuring the water quality at that exact moment.
That's a great way to put it, yes.
But with chimpanzees, that rapid sampling model completely falls apart.
Right.
You can't just drop in for a summer.
No, not at all. Primatology demands this massive institutional, multi-generational commitment.
Because they live so long.
Exactly. We are talking about an animal that routinely lives into its 50s or even its 60s in the wild.
Wow, 60 years.
Yeah. And they have a massive brain, complex social hierarchies, and an incredibly slow reproductive rate.
Right. It's not like they're having litters of chimps every spring.
No, a female chimpanzee might only give birth every 5 to 6 years. And that infant remains entirely dependent on her for a huge portion of its early life.
So a snapshot study, like one season, would essentially tell you nothing about their overall evolutionary fitness.
Nothing at all. To understand who survives, who successfully raises offspring to adulthood, and what specific behaviors drive that success, you have to commit to watching a single community for decades.
Decades.
Yeah.
Which is just a crazy level of dedication.
It is. And this legacy of long-term great ape research, it was really born out of that biological necessity. We saw this architecture put into place about 60 years ago.
Pioneers.
Exactly. Jane Goodall arrived at Gombe Stream in Tanzania back to 1965. Toshisada Nishida established the Mahal Mountains Project that same year.
Oh, wow, the exact same year.
Yeah. And then Dian Fossey set up the Karasok Research Center for Mountain Gorillas a bit later in 1967.
They must have realized pretty quickly what they were getting into.
They did. They realized early on that you are essentially mapping the intricate politics, the shifting alliances, and the slow-motion life histories of a highly intelligent society.
And the barrier to entry for this kind of data collection is monumental, largely because of this massive psychological hurdle known as habituation.
Yes. Habituation is the absolute core of all of this.
I mean, this concept is fascinating because it sounds simple on paper, right?
Yeah.
Like just get them used to you.
Yeah.
But the reality of actually executing it is grueling.
Grueling is the right word. If you walk into a forest and a wild, unhabituated chimpanzee spots you, their evolutionary instinct kicks in immediately.
Because they don't see a scientist with a clipboard, they see a threat.
Exactly. They view you as a massive bipedal predator. They will alarm call, they will flee high into the canopy, or they might just hide in dense vegetation in complete silence.
So if you just watch them running away, you're not actually observing natural chimpanzee behavior.
Right. You are just observing the stress response of an animal reacting to a terrifying anomaly.
So to gather authentic data on what they eat, how they socialize, how they mate, you have to slowly, painstakingly convince them that you are entirely irrelevant.
You are systematically overriding their fear response through sheer neutral repetition.
That sounds exhausting. How do they even do that?
Well, researchers will spend years simply following the chimpanzees at a great distance, making no sudden movements, avoiding direct eye contact, and never, ever offering food or trying to interact. You are essentially training them to categorize humans as a benign, profoundly uninteresting feature of the landscape.
It's like committing to watching a multi-generational soap opera in real time, in slow motion, where you have to stand in the bushes for 5 years before the actors even ignore you.
That's incredibly accurate. It can take 5, sometimes 10 years of daily effort before a community will finally relax enough to just feed and groom on the ground while a human observer sits a few yards away taking notes.
It is an exercise in becoming a boring tree.
A very boring, very observant tree.
I was reading through the methodology of the Kibale Chimpanzee Project, specifically focusing on the Kanyawara community, and the sheer endurance required is staggering.
Yeah.
They have maintained continuous daily data collection since 1987.
It's almost hard to wrap your head around that.
Right. That means every single day, for over 35 years, field assistants and researchers have been waking up before dawn, trekking into the damp, dense undergrowth of the Ugandan forest, and tracking these specific animals until they build their nests to sleep at night.
Which is often 12 to 14 hours of unbroken observation every single day.
You're tracking the rise and fall of alpha males, the migration of adolescent females, every birth, every death. It's a level of professional dedication that literally spans the entirety of a scientist's career.
It does. And the motivation behind this immense effort goes far beyond simply, cataloging animal behavior for fun.
Right. Why go through all this trouble just for chimps?
What's fascinating here is the evolutionary connection. We share a profound amount of our genetic architecture with them, our life history variables, our physiology.
We're basically cousins.
Very close cousins. They exhibit tool use, they engage in coordinated hunts, they possess deep emotional bonds, and they navigate these incredibly complex political power struggles.
So when we study them, we're learning about ourselves.
Exactly. When we study the environmental pressures that shape chimpanzee survival, we are essentially holding up a mirror to our own evolutionary past. We are looking at the foundational mechanics of human evolution.
Which makes the stage for this specific drama so critical. We really need to visualize for you exactly where this 30-year data set was collected.
Kibale National Park.
Right. Picture a 766 square kilometer reserve sitting right on the equator in southwestern Uganda. But it's not some sweltering sea-level jungle like you might imagine.
No, it actually sits on a plateau at an elevation of about 1,500 meters, resting right in the shadow of the Rwenzori Mountains.
And the topography is this highly complex mosaic. You've got deep ravines filled with ancient primary forest, sweeping stretches of elephant grass, areas of previously logged forest that are regenerating, and these incredibly dense waterlogged swamps.
It is a dynamic, highly varied landscape. But there is one fundamental botanical characteristic that dictates the entire ecology of Kibale.
And this blew my mind when I read it. It has to do with the geochemistry below the surface, right?
Yes. Kibale sits on exceptionally high-quality, nutrient-dense volcanic soil.
Okay, so good dirt. Why does that matter so much?
Well, the phosphorus and nitrogen availability here exceeds that of almost any other tropical forest on the continent. And in the world of forest ecology, the quality of the soil dictates the defensive strategy of the trees.
I wanted to dig into the mechanics of this because it is so cool. When you think of trees, you usually think of these passive organisms just soaking up sunlight.
Right, just standing there.
But plants are actively engaged in chemical warfare.
Oh, absolutely. They have to be.
Because in a typical rainforest where the soil is heavily leached and nutrient poor, a tree has to invest a massive amount of metabolic energy into growing just one leaf.
It's expensive real estate.
Exactly. Because that leaf is so energetically expensive to replace, the tree has to fiercely protect it from caterpillars, beetles, and monkeys. So the tree pumps its leaves and fruits full of what botanists call secondary compounds.
Yes, the chemical armor.
Right. Toxins, tannins, complex alkaloids, things that taste incredibly bitter and literally bind to the proteins in a herbivore's stomach, making the leaf virtually impossible to digest.
In a nutrient-poor environment, the forest is essentially a fortress. The vegetation is highly, highly defended.
But in Kibale,
Right. In Kibale, that geological lottery of incredibly rich soil completely alters the botanical economics.
because they have all those nutrients.
Exactly. Because the trees have access to such abundant soil nutrients, replacing a leaf that gets eaten isn't a catastrophic loss. Therefore, they just don't need to invest heavily in synthesizing those expensive, toxic secondary compounds.
The chemical defenses are lowered.
Exactly. The result is that the leaves and the fruits are softer, lower in toxins, and incredibly easy to digest.
That single subterranean fact transforms the canopy of Kibale into a massive, low-friction buffet.
A primate paradise, basically.
Right. The available caloric energy in this forest is astronomical compared to other habitats, and the demographic data reflects this bounty perfectly.
It does. Because the food is so abundant and easy to process, Kibale actually supports the highest recorded primate population density in all of Africa.
I think the paper notes an average of 2.3 chimpanzees per square kilometer.
Which is huge. For a large-bodied territorial omnivore like a chimpanzee, a density of 2.3 individuals per square kilometer is staggering.
So imagine a bustling city, but instead of humans, it's just primates everywhere.
Exactly. It means the forest is constantly bustling with primate activity. You have red colobus monkeys, black and white colobus, baboons, and chimpanzees, all sharing this highly productive airspace.
And unlike chimpanzees in other parts of their historical range across Africa, who are often pushed into fragmented, unprotected patches of woodland, the Kanyawara chimpanzees are living inside the boundaries of a legally protected national park.
Right, which creates this fascinating illusion of safety.
Because if you look at the global status of chimpanzees, the International Union for Conservation of Nature is very clear. The absolute greatest threat to the survival of the species globally is poaching.
Yeah, the bushmeat trade.
Right, we're talking about commercial bushmeat hunting, the horrific snare and shotgun tactics used to harvest body parts, and the capture of live infants to feed the illegal exotic pet trade.
It's an industrial-scale extraction, and it can wipe out a local population in a matter of years. It's devastating.
And because Kibale is a protected national park with a heavy, continuous presence of research teams and wildlife authorities, the Kanyawara community is largely shielded from that kind of targeted commercial-scale poaching.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, though, the boundary of a national park is porous. The absence of commercial poachers does not mean the absence of profound human-induced threats.
Because the Kanyawara chimpanzees face a landscape laced with hidden, incidental dangers.
Right. And the first and most pervasive of these are wire hunting snares.
Let's break down the mechanics of these snares for you listening, because they are a brutal reality of living on the boundary of the Anthropocene. These aren't traps designed for chimpanzees, are they?
No, not at all. Local communities living adjacent to the park often rely on subsistence hunting. They take cheap, widely available materials like the brake cables from bicycles or motorcycles and fashion them into simple slip knots.
Just a loop of wire.
Exactly. They anchor one end to a heavy log or a sturdy sapling and lay the loop flat on the forest floor, usually along game trails. They're hoping to catch a bush pig or a small antelope for dinner.
It's a passive, indiscriminate hunting method.
Completely indiscriminate. A chimpanzee, traveling silently along those same forest trails, steps their hand or foot into the loop.
And then what happens?
Well, the moment they pull against it, the wire snaps taut and locks. Now, a mature chimpanzee possesses immense physical strength, often enough to rip the anchor log right out of the ground or snap the branch holding the snare.
But the wire is still there.
Exactly. The wire itself remains tightly coiled around their limb.
And because it's woven steel, they can't just bite through it.
No, they can't.
The paper notes that a significant percentage of the Kanyawara community bears the scars of these encounters. As the chimpanzee moves, the wire cuts deeper into the muscle and bone.
It cuts off circulation, leading to severe necrosis, the loss of fingers, hands, or feet, and massive systemic infections.
It is a constant ambient threat that introduces a heavy toll of long-term disability and mortality into the population.
It is, but there is a second, even more devastating threat detailed in the text. And it stems directly from the biological reality that makes studying them so valuable in the first place.
Oh, this part. Wait, human colds.
Yeah.
Are you telling me that simply breathing near them is a major source of mortality?
Yes. The phylogenetic closeness between humans and chimpanzees means that we share highly similar cellular receptors.
So our cells look the same to a virus.
Exactly. A virus that has evolved to unlock human respiratory cells is spectacularly well equipped to unlock a chimpanzee's respiratory cells. The sources state unequivocally that a major source of mortality for these wild apes is human respiratory disease.
I had to stop and reread the virology section of this paper multiple times because the implications are just terrifying. We aren't talking about complex exotic tropical diseases like Ebola here.
No. We are talking about the pathogens that cause the common cold in humans. Things like human metapneumovirus or standard rhinoviruses.
Right, things we get every winter.
Exactly. When a human catches one of these, our adaptive immune systems recognize it. We have co-evolved with these pathogens for centuries.
We experience a few days of a runny nose, a mild fever, maybe a cough, and then our white blood cells clear the infection. We essentially have population-level herd immunity.
But wild chimpanzees possess absolutely zero historical exposure to these specific viral strains. Their adaptive immune systems are entirely blind to them.
So when a human virus breaches the forest boundary,
Whether it is carried by a local villager collecting firewood, a poacher setting a snare, or even, despite the most rigorous quarantine protocols, an asymptomatic researcher.
the pathogen doesn't just cause a mild sniffle.
No. It sweeps through the dense social networks of the chimpanzee community with devastating speed and severity.
The text literally uses the phrase, pandemic human viruses cause decline of endangered great apes.
It's horrifying. A virus that causes a mild tickle in a human throat rapidly descends into the lower respiratory tract of a chimpanzee, causing severe bilateral pneumonia.
Their lungs fill with fluid. And without the capacity for medical intervention, massive die-offs occur.
Yeah. In many habituated ape populations across Africa, this invisible transmission of human colds is actually the leading cause of death.
So we have to synthesize the environmental pressures acting on this specific community.
Okay.
You have a population navigating a forest floor laced with amputation hazards from the snares.
Right.
You have an atmosphere where a single human sneeze floating across the park boundary can trigger a fatal respiratory outbreak.
Yes.
And overlaid on top of these acute threats, the paper notes that the regional climate is actively shifting, becoming warmer and wetter, which disrupts the historical fruiting cycles of the trees they rely on.
That's a lot of pressure.
The logical extrapolation from these data points leads to one inevitable conclusion. Between the snares, the human diseases, and the shifting climate, this chimpanzee community must be collapsing, right?
That is exactly what you would expect.
The demographic models should show a population in freefall. The Kanyawara chimpanzees should be disappearing.
But here's where the Kibale Chimpanzee Project delivers its most profound scientific revelation. The data, meticulously compiled day by day since 1987, reveals the exact opposite.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
The population hasn't crashed. In fact, it has experienced modest, sustained growth over the last 3 decades.
Their birth rates have actually increased.
Yes. It is a stunning paradox.
It makes no sense at first glance.
Eh.
And the behavioral data is even more fascinating than the demographic data. The paper highlights a fundamental, measurable shift in their societal structure. Female chimpanzees in Kanyawara have become increasingly gregarious.
Which is highly unusual.
Right. They are socializing, traveling, and foraging together significantly more now than they did 30 years ago.
To understand why a shift in female sociality is such a critical indicator of ecological health, we have to look at the energetic economics of wild chimpanzees.
Okay, let's break that down.
In standard chimpanzee societies, the males are the highly social demographic. They form tight coalitions, They groom each other constantly to maintain political alliances, and they patrol the territorial boundaries of their home range as a unified front.
Because they're protecting their turf.
Exactly. The evolutionary payoff for this male sociability is the defense of a territory that contains females, which directly translates to reproductive success.
But the math is entirely different for female chimpanzees.
Completely different.
A female's primary evolutionary imperative is to secure enough caloric energy to sustain her own body and to produce enough rich milk to nurse an infant for up to 5 years.
And in a typical resource-limited forest, food is scattered. A fruiting fig tree is essentially a localized patch of high-value calories.
So if a female travels in a large group with 5 other adult females, they arrive at that tree and immediately have to compete with each other for the same limited number of figs.
Right. The energetic cost of competition outweighs the benefits of socializing. If you are constantly fighting over food, you burn more calories than you consume.
So the default strategy for female chimpanzees in most environments is solitary foraging.
They spread out. They intentionally isolate themselves in smaller, overlapping core areas within the larger territory to avoid direct competition over resources. They literally sacrifice social bonds for caloric efficiency.
Which makes this 30-year observation in Kanyawara so monumental. Because if the females are actively choosing to become more social, if they are gathering in larger groups and tolerating each other's presence while eating, it means the underlying energetic economics of the forest have fundamentally changed.
The competition for food has basically vanished.
And the paper provides the answer for why this is happening. It attributes this social shift and the population growth to an immense increase in, quote, habitat productivity.
The forest itself has become a more powerful engine for generating calories.
And the authors point out that this isn't some random botanical anomaly, right?
No, it is the direct result of decades of active conservation management. Prior to the establishment of the national park and the sustained presence of researchers, sections of Kibale had been subjected to commercial logging.
So the canopy was opened up, the primary trees were removed, the ecosystem was disturbed.
Exactly. But when you enforce a protected boundary, the forest begins the slow, powerful process of ecological succession.
It heals.
Yes. The logged areas began to regenerate. Fast-growing pioneer species took root, eventually giving way to the massive fruit-bearing trees that chimpanzees rely on.
Because the wildlife authorities and the research project maintain the integrity of the park boundaries, preventing further large-scale agricultural encroachment or logging, the biomass of the forest rebounded spectacularly.
The amount of digestible energy produced per square kilometer absolutely skyrocketed. The chimpanzees found themselves living in a habitat that was producing significantly more food than it did in the 1980s.
So what does this all mean? It's like living in a neighborhood with a slightly higher risk of getting a bad flu, and there are some dangerous traps in the yards, but suddenly everyone has an unlimited grocery budget and free childcare.
That's a perfect analogy.
The sheer, overwhelming abundance of resources completely buttress the population against the environmental hazards.
The caloric surplus acts as an energetic shield. Because the females no longer have to isolate themselves to find enough food, they can afford the luxury of socializing.
And more importantly, that massive caloric intake translates directly into reproductive health.
Exactly. They are in better physical condition, which allows them to conceive more frequently, gestate healthier infants, and sustain lactation without depleting their own bodily reserves.
So the increased birth rate simply outpaces the mortality caused by snares and disease.
Precisely.
Now, I was tracking with all of this while reading the paper. The logic is incredibly sound. More food equals more energy, which equals behavioral shifts and population growth.
Makes sense.
But then I hit a massive logical wall. Yeah. The researchers are claiming they know the energy balance of these wild animals. They are definitively stating that the chimpanzees possess more internal metabolic energy. But we already established the fundamental rule of this kind of research. You cannot touch them. The ethical and methodological guidelines of modern primatology strictly prohibit darting them with tranquilizers to draw blood, check their body fat, or measure their metabolism in a lab.
It is the central paradox of field endocrinology. How do you definitively prove the internal physiological state of a wild, dangerous predator without ever laying a finger on it?
Because you can't just look at a chimpanzee and objectively quantify its caloric surplus through binoculars.
No, you can't.
You can't put a smartwatch on a wild ape to track its metabolic burn.
That would be convenient, but no.
So how do they actually measure this? Because without capturing them, how on earth do scientists actually measure a wild animal's energy balance?
The answer to this is arguably one of the most brilliant scientific innovations to emerge from long-term sites like the Kibale chimpanzee project. The researchers pioneered a suite of non-invasive physiological assessments.
Okay.
They figured out how to extract laboratory-grade metabolic data from the biological waste the animals leave behind on the forest floor.
Wait, their waste?
Another thing. Yes. Specifically, they began tracking something called urinary C-peptides.
Okay, pee. We are talking about peeing in the name of science.
We absolutely are. And the biochemistry behind this is truly elegant. To understand why C-peptides are the holy grail of field metabolism, we have to look at how a mammalian body processes food.
Okay, take us back to biology class.
When a chimpanzee eats a massive meal of wild figs, its digestive system breaks those carbohydrates down into glucose, which floods into the bloodstream. To move that glucose out of the blood and into the cells where it can be used for energy, the pancreas produces a hormone called insulin.
Right, insulin. We all know insulin. Now, in theory, if you want to know how much energy an animal is processing, you just measure their insulin levels, right? The more they eat, the more insulin they produce.
In theory, yes. But there is a massive logistical problem with insulin in a field setting. Insulin is an incredibly unstable molecule.
Oh, it degrades.
Very quickly. Its half-life in the bloodstream is very short, and it breaks down rapidly once it leaves the body. If you wanted to measure a chimpanzee's insulin, you would need to draw fresh blood and immediately process it in a sterile, temperature-controlled laboratory.
Which is physically impossible in the middle of a remote Ugandan rainforest.
Totally impossible. But biology provided a workaround.
Okay.
When the beta cells in the pancreas manufacture insulin, they don't produce it in its final form. They synthesize a larger precursor molecule called proinsulin.
Proinsulin. Got it.
As this proinsulin is packaged inside the cell, an enzyme snips the molecule into two pieces. One piece is the active insulin. The other piece, the leftover fragment that was just cleaved off, is the C-peptide.
And the mathematical beauty of this cellular process is that the cleavage happens in a strict one-to-one ratio.
Yes.
For every single molecule of insulin released into the blood to handle the fruit sugars, exactly one molecule of C-peptide is also released.
Exactly one. But unlike insulin, the C-peptide doesn't break down immediately. It is highly stable.
So it sticks around.
It circulates through the bloodstream, gets filtered out by the kidneys, and is eventually excreted in the urine.
This was the breakthrough detailed in the pivotal 2009 study by Melissa Emery Thompson, right? One of the co-authors of this synthesis.
Yes. She and her colleagues proved that by measuring the concentration of C-peptides in chimpanzee urine, they had a direct, highly stable, and perfectly correlated mirror of the animal's insulin production.
Which, in turn, is a direct mirror of their energetic intake.
Exactly.
I mean, imagine dedicating your life to wandering a beautiful Ugandan forest,
Yeah.
just waiting for a primate to pee on a leaf so you can scoop it up and measure its C-peptides.
It's not glamorous.
No, but that's the genius of it. You get lab-quality health data without ever touching the animal.
The actual field methodology required to capture this data is incredible. Imagine the day-to-day reality of this. You have a researcher with a PhD wandering through a pristine, deeply shadowed jungle, armed with a plastic pipette and a little collection tube.
Just staring up.
Staring up into the canopy, patiently waiting for a specific, individually identified chimpanzee to urinate. The liquid cascades down, splashing onto the broad, waxy leaves of the undergrowth.
And they have to run over and grab it.
The researcher rushes over, carefully pipettes the droplets off the leaf before they evaporate or get absorbed, seals the tube, and then has to hike it back to camp to be frozen in liquid nitrogen until it can be shipped across the world to an endocrinology lab.
It sounds absurd, but it is a masterclass in non-invasive science. By doing this systematically over years and decades, they built a massive longitudinal database of chimpanzee metabolism.
They can literally plot the C-peptide levels against the seasonal fruiting cycles of the trees.
They can track the energy deficit of a female during peak lactation and watch her metabolic surplus return when the infant is weaned.
They have chemical proof that the Kanyawara chimpanzees are physiologically processing more energy now than they were 20 years ago.
And once they unlocked the ability to read the biochemical diary hidden in urine, they didn't just stop at metabolism. The paper notes that they applied similar techniques to track hormonal fluctuations, testing both urine and feces.
Right. They started measuring testosterone and cortisol. The text specifically highlights how they use these tools to test the challenge hypothesis.
Oh, right, the challenge hypothesis. That is a fascinating evolutionary framework. It examines how male testosterone levels fluctuate in response to social instability.
Exactly. In a stable chimpanzee hierarchy, where the alpha male's position is completely secure, baseline testosterone levels across the males might be relatively moderate.
Because they're just chilling.
Right. But if a young, ambitious male begins to challenge the alpha, if the political structure of the community is suddenly thrown into chaos, you see a massive, quantifiable spike in androgen levels as they prepare for physical confrontation.
By collecting waste samples from specific males during these periods of political upheaval, the researchers at Kibale can literally map the social hierarchy on a molecular level.
They can correlate a spike in a male's stress hormones with a drop in his energetic C-peptides, proving exactly how physically exhausting it is to fight for the alpha position.
They are no longer just observing that a chimpanzee looks tired or acts aggressive. They are mathematically proving the physiological costs of primate politics.
And the impact of this methodological breakthrough extends far beyond Kibale.
Right, because other scientists saw this and said, we need to do that.
Exactly. The paper explicitly points out that the non-invasive techniques pioneered and refined here have become the gold standard for conservation science globally.
Like with orangutans, right?
Yes. Researchers at the Gunung Palung Orangutan Project in Indonesia, for example, have adopted these exact methods. Orangutans are critically endangered, highly arboreal, and generally solitary, making them incredibly difficult to monitor.
Because you can't even habituate them the same way if they're always hiding alone up in the trees.
Right. But by analyzing the urine and feces raining down from the canopy, scientists can track the reproductive health and energetic stress of entire orangutan populations without ever disrupting their natural behavior.
It fundamentally changes our ability to diagnose the natural world. And this brings us to the crux of why this 30-year synthesis from biological conservation is so important.
It really does.
Without this multi-decade, deeply molecular approach, our understanding of the Kanyawara chimpanzees would be completely distorted. If a research team only had funding for, say, a 2-year study, and they happened to arrive during a severe outbreak of a human respiratory virus,
Their snapshot data would definitively conclude that the population was crashing due to anthropogenic disease.
Exactly. Conversely, if they only studied the community during a drought year, they would conclude that chimps were starving. The short-term correlations would completely mask the long-term reality.
It is only by layering 30 years of behavioral observation over 30 years of continuous hormonal and energetic data that the true diagnostic picture emerges.
The massive increasing bounty of the regenerating forest acts as a rising tide, lifting the population's baseline health so high that they can absorb the devastating blows of snares and viruses.
Which brings us to the ultimate, zoomed-out perspective of this entire deep dive. We started by looking at a stack of academic papers, the mechanics of field biology, the biochemistry of leaves, and, well, the molecular structure of primate urine.
But what the Kibale Chimpanzee Project represents, in its totality, is a staggeringly complex, highly successful model for modern conservation. The project didn't just passively observe the forest.
No, the act of observation transformed the forest.
The continuous presence of a long-term research station fundamentally alters the socioeconomic geography of a region. The authors of the synthesis emphasized that long-term field sites perform an active, essential role in species protection.
Because the daily patrols of the researchers and field assistants act as a massive deterrent to illegal logging and commercial poaching within the study area.
But it goes far beyond just guarding the trees, doesn't it?
It does. The project integrates into the local economy. By employing local Ugandan field assistants, camp managers, and botanists, the research station provides high-quality, sustainable livelihoods.
Which offers a direct alternative to the economic pressures that drive subsistence hunting and snare setting in the first place.
Furthermore, the paper highlights the massive positive economic impacts generated at the national level. The habituation techniques developed for research have paved the way for highly regulated, nationally significant ecotourism.
Right. Tourists travel from around the world to Kibale to observe these primates, injecting crucial foreign exchange into the Ugandan economy.
When a living forest ecosystem becomes a major economic driver for both local communities and the national government, the political will to protect those park boundaries solidifies. A forest full of chimpanzees becomes undeniably more valuable intact than it does cleared for timber or agriculture.
And the project couples this economic engine with deep grassroots conservation education programs. They are working with local schools, changing the cultural paradigm, and teaching the next generation the profound ecological value of the ecosystem sitting right in their backyard.
It proves that knowledge isn't just power, it's a protective shield for the ecosystem. We saved the forest by simply committing to understanding it.
It is a profound synergy between pure scientific inquiry and applied conservation. The data protects the apes, and the apes provide the data.
However,
As with every complex ecological intervention in the Anthropocene, this success story contains a deeply challenging philosophical knot.
it absolutely does. And this is the thought I want to leave you, the listener, with today. Something to turn over in your mind long after we wrap up this deep dive. It's the paradox of habituation.
Right, the foundational pillar of everything we just discussed. The 30 years of data, the ability to measure their energy balance, the deterrence of poachers, and the economic engine of ecotourism, all of it relies entirely on habituation.
Getting the chimps used to humans is what allowed us to protect them, study them, and ultimately help their population grow. Habituation is the absolute prerequisite for their protection.
Yet the biological data is equally clear. That exact same proximity, the fact that they no longer flee from the sight of a human, is precisely what exposes them to the invisible drift of human respiratory viruses.
Our presence is the catalyst for their greatest mortality threat. We have fundamentally rewired their evolutionary instincts to trust us, and in doing so, we expose them to our pathogens.
It is the ultimate double-edged sword of modern ecology. You cannot save what you do not understand, but the act of understanding requires a closeness that is inherently dangerous.
It really makes you wonder.
If our presence in the forest is simultaneously the cure that allows the ecosystem to regenerate and the disease that routinely ravages their population, where exactly is the line between merely observing nature and becoming a permanent, inextricably linked part of its biology?
The diagnostic X-ray of the wild remains incredibly murky.
It's a profound complexity to ponder the next time you step into the woods and consider your own footprint on the landscape. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today.
It's been an absolute privilege to explore this with you.
Heliox is produced by Michelle Brucker and Scott Bleakley. It features reviews of emerging research and ideas from leading thinkers, curated under their creative direction with AI assistance for voice, imagery, and composition. Systemic voices and illustrative images of people are representative tools, not depictions of specific individuals. Thanks for listening today. 4 recurring narratives underlie every episode: boundary dissolution, adaptive complexity, embodied knowledge, and quantum-like uncertainty. These aren't just philosophical musings, but frameworks for understanding our modern world. We hope you continue exploring our other episodes, responding to the content, and checking out our related articles at helioxpodcast.substack.com.